السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Salam. How are you guys? I hope you're all well, inshallah.
All good, Sheikh. Yourself? Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, all well. Inshallah, today we'll be... Let's just wait for anybody else to come. We'll start off with fiqh, and then sorry, aqidah, and then sarf. I think you guys have reached a point where we need to start making an effort to go through our sarf, and inshallah, once you manage to get it, sarf, you'll be able to understand. So all this madi, mudari, amr, etc. will come, inshallah. Did you guys revise?
Just Sheikh, listen to the lecture again.
Okay, did you understand?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
Okay. Okay, one more minute and then we can start. One more minute and we can start. Right. Astaghfirullah. That. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the previous lessons in fiqh, we spoke about the conditions for zakah to become compulsory upon somebody. So we said that not everybody pays zakah. You pay zakah if you have, or if there are certain conditions which are fulfilled. And we took them, inshallah. I'll ask you about them after I finish. After that, you find generally the scholars then go on to speak about the wealth that you give zakah on. And a lot of them start off with zakatu bahimatil an'am. Bahimatul an'am is referring to the animals which are permissible to eat, i.e. camels, goats, and cows. And what enters into camels are those which have one hump as well as two. When it comes to cows, you've got the normal cows we have and what they call jamus. Jamus is like a domestic buffalo, domestic, not a wild one. So it's also like a cow. And then when you got goats, they're speaking about the goat, the one with the hair, as well as the sheep, those with wool. When taking this bab or this chapter as a whole, there's a few things or few encompassing rules that you've got to remember. The first is when we're speaking about zakah on these animals, we're speaking about a person, obviously according to the Hanafi madhab, we're speaking about a person who is farming these animals for milk, as well as he wants them to increase, i.e. to reproduce. And so those are two conditions. And the third is they are grazing, they call it sa'ima, they are grazing from the grass, from what Allah has provided, the grass, the hay, the trees, etc., for half of the year or more. So what does that mean? The minute his animals are not what's called a sa'ima or sawa'im, where he is buying the hay for them, he is providing food for them, then there's no zakah on this farmer or this person who's keeping these animals. So that's the first condition you've got to remember. Is this person's animals benefiting when it comes to their food, their grazing, from what Allah has provided in nature for them, or are they making an effort to actually go out and buy grass, buy hay, etc.? Also, what you've got to realize is you don't pay zakah on every single cow or goat or sheep that you may have, cow, goat, camel, or sheep. We mentioned that they should be kept for milk as well as for reproduction. If a person keeps a cow in order to carry stuff, they call it al-hamula, as well as those which work in the fields. So in those days, you never have cars and tractors, etc. So there were some cows or some camels which were specifically kept just to transport goods. They don't enter into this chapter where we're speaking about giving zakah. Also, there were those cows which were meant to work in the field, to plow the field. Here they are working cows. And you don't pay zakah on them. Why? What's the reason? They're looking at a person who's farming these animals in order for them to grow and multiply. That's the reason. And if they do not grow and multiply, so he's kept them to hold, to plow his fields or to transport goods. Here they mention that one of the reasons, or if you look at the illah, the reasoning behind this type of farmer who's keeping it, it's not for them to increase. So here a person wouldn't pay zakah. And also they mention when it comes to what's called alufa. Alufa is a person who's giving alaf. Alaf is your food, your hay, your grass. So a person who's feeding his animal for half the year or more, they won't pay zakah when it comes to this chapter. So those are general rules you've got to remember. Thereafter, the scholars, they start speaking about the different animals and how you pay. Now, it's not like gold and silver where if you reach one type of nisab, then you pay, and the minute you're under, you don't pay. Here, you've got different thresholds, and every time you reach a threshold, there's a different amount you have to pay. So generally, you find they all start with zakatul ibil. Ibil are your camels. And inshallah, today what we will do is we'll take part of it. Why? Because there's a lot of numbers to remember. So when you're speaking about, here, let's come here. So we're speaking about bahimatul an'am. When you've got camels, okay? We're speaking about your camels. I'm going to put a C and an A here. And then you've got cows. We haven't yet come to cows. And then you've got sheep or goats. We haven't yet come to those we're speaking about here. As I told you, it's not like gold and silver, where the minute you reach nisab, you pay, and you below nisab, you don't pay. No, here you look. So at times, a person may have to give one animal. At times, he may have to give 2 animals. At times, he may have to give 3 animals, etc., depending on his threshold. So I'll give you the first part. When it comes to camels, anybody who has less than 5 camels, so you're holding camels, you have less than 5, you don't pay zakah on them. And bearing in mind the conditions I mentioned at the beginning, they must be sa'imatul hawli aw akthari. They're grazing from what Allah has provided, i.e. the nature Allah has provided, they're grazing from that for half the year or more. If a person is feeding his own camels, he doesn't have to pay zakah on them. Also, he's kept them for milk and reproduction. So if a person has 1 up to 4 camels, there's no zakah here, okay? Then from 5 to 9, okay, let's say a person has 5 camels, or they have 6 camels, or they have 7 camels, or they have 8 camels, or they have 9 camels. They give 1 sheep, not 1 camel, 1 sheep. Why? Because generally this wealth is not considered to be, it's a lot of wealth if you look at it, but because we're getting to higher thresholds, you find that it's hard for a person who's only got 6 camels and say, you know, I'd give 1 in zakah. So you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it easy, where he says when a person has 5 up to, sorry, here should be 9 camels. Let me rub that out. Five up to 9, you pay 1 sheep. You pay a sheep, okay? And the sheep, it must be at least a year old. They call it thani, ma tamma laha hawl. Then from 10 up to 14, 10 up to 14, if a person has either 10 camels or 11 camels, 12 camels, 13 camels, they give 2 sheep, okay? And if they have 15 up to 19, they give 3 sheep. and 19, oh, sorry, not 19, 20 up to 24. You give 4 sheep. And this is the first part we want to take. That look, if you look at, I've got a different color here. If you take this and you draw a line, this is the only type of animal when it comes to zakah that you're going to give its zakah from a different type of animal if you 24 or under. Did you understand? The minute you're going above 24, so the minute you're going to 25 and over, you'll be giving your zakah in camels, and inshallah we'll take that tomorrow. So what you've got to understand, if a person asks you, he says that I've got camels, do I have to, how much zakah should I pay? What's the first question you ask him, Naeem?
The first question I would ask him is, do they produce milk?
Yeah, what are you keeping these camels for? Are you keeping them in order for milk and reproduction, etc., or are you using them to plow your field, for example, or you're using them just for transportation purposes only? Okay, let's say he tells you that I'm keeping them for milk and I want them to increase. What's the next question you ask him?
Next question would be, are they grazing on Allah's land?
Yes.
For more?
Yes. So are they grazing? Exactly. Are they grazing naturally, or are you feeding them? If he tells you for 5 months of the year we have rain, so they graze in nature, and 7 months of the year we have no rain, so I buy their food.
Then you don't pay zakah.
You won't pay zakah on that. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
It has to be more than half the year.
Yeah, half the year or more. Okay. Let's ask Alam Gheer. This person then says that I have 9 camels. How much zakah should I pay? What do you tell him?
Up to 9 is 1 sheep.
One sheep. So 5. Yeah. So he has either 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. You tell him you must give 1 sheep in sadaqah or zakah. And in those days, what would happen is a person who's called a sa'i, he would go out. So somebody was tasked from the Islamic rulership to go and collect zakah. So they would come to your farm. They would ask you your questions. At times, it was known in certain places that, okay, these sheep graze everywhere, these camels graze from nature, from what Allah has provided. So the guy would count your camels, and then he would say, okay, you have to give me so much. Let's say he has to give 2 sheep or 3 sheep. Then he would take the sheep with him, and he would go to the next farm, and he would go to what's called the Baytul Mal. Baytul Mal is like your Islamic treasury. So it's not that they would cut the sheep, for example, and give him a carcass. No, you would take the sheep completely. And as you learn when we go further here, the minute you're going 25 and above up to 120, so it carries on differing. You have to give a certain type of camel that's a certain age group. And remember, when it comes to the animals here, what we're talking about, you'll find a lot of times what's required is to give a female camel, a female cow, etc., because the females reproduce and they give milk, so they're much more valuable. And the older they are, the more they cost. So in a nutshell, what did we take? We said that when you're looking at zakatu bahimatil an'am, you find camels, cows, and goats, you find that you have general rules. The first is they should be grazing from what Allah has provided, i.e. from nature, for half the year or more. If you are feeding them, then you won't pay zakah. It's according to the Hanafi madhab. After that, a person should be keeping them for milk and reproduction. So if a person is keeping his animals and he's just using them for transport, etc., he won't pay zakah on them. Then we go to the different ansibah, or the different thresholds. And we mentioned 1 to 4, that is afu. Afu means it's forgiven. You don't have to pay anything here. 5 to 9, you pay 1 sheep. 10 to 14, you give 2. 15 to 19, you give 3. and 20 to 24, you'll give 4. And inshallah, tomorrow we'll take 25 and above. And generally the longest when it comes to, or the most thresholds when it comes to zakah of the animals is camels. You'll find cows, it's just 2 or 3, and then they tell you, then every time you go up in number, like 50, then give either this or that. So every time you add 50, you add 50, like that, and you take it. Any questions?
Sheikh, my question is regarding the grazing. I
Yeah.
just missed it. So grazing in a nature, and then feeding them.
Okay, so I give you an
yourself.
example. If you are living in the desert and you have camels and there's nothing that grows in the desert, you are forced to go and find food for your camels or your animals, correct?
Yes.
As opposed to somebody who's living in a tropical rainforest where everything grows. You've got grass and nature and trees everywhere. Okay? So who has to pay zakah and who doesn't? And look at the reasoning. This person is already spending in order to keep his animals alive. He's spending on food. He's spending on water. He is spending on other things. Hence, he is excused from zakah according to the Hanafi madhab. And there's a hadith that speaks about sa'ima. Right now, we're taking masail, and at times I give you a piece of evidence because I want to get you familiar with the different rulings, different masail. Then you can remember, oh, when I was doing zakah one day, I heard sa'imatul hawli aw akthari. What I heard that mas'ala. I understand what it means. And then the next round of fiqh, remember you can't learn it all at once. You take the masail. After that you take evidence. After that you take difference inside the madhab. And after that you go outside the madhab. Omar?
What about chicken?
Yeah.
What about chicken? Can we do a chicken farm give zakah?
No, so that's one thing I didn't mention to you is here we're talking about goats, cows, and sheep, a person who's keeping them for reproduction and milk. Do chickens give you milk?
No.
Okay, but let's say a person buys and sells cows, buys and sells sheep, buys and sells chickens. Here you would count that livestock as your inventory, your stock at the end of the year, because they deal in chickens, they deal in cows and goats, buying and selling, buying and selling, buying and selling. So it's become a business. They're not farming them in order to keep them for their milk and reproduction in that way. No, they're using it as urud al-tijara.
I see. Thank you.
Understand? Also, another important mas'ala to remember when it comes to your camels, cows, and sheep, as well as when it comes to your money, right? Let's say you've reached nisab, and then all of a sudden, just before the year passes, so you're supposed to pay your zakah in Ramadan. Let's say the 10th of Ramadan. And on the 8th of Ramadan, let's say you had camels, you had 100 camels, and then within the week just before you have to pay your zakah, 50 of them gave birth. Here your threshold of zakah will go up even though you haven't held them for a year. Same when it comes to your money. So let's say you're a businessman and you've got $1 million, and just before you're about to pay your zakah, let's say a month before, you have a great sale and you profit greatly, and all of a sudden you're holding now 2 million, even though you only held it for a few days, because it came from the same type of business you are in, you will be required to pay zakah. And you won't say, for example, that let's say this is money. I got this $100 bill today on the 1st of Ramadan. Hence, for this particular piece of money or paper note, I'll pay for the 1st of Ramadan. Then you get another $700, and then you say, okay, for this particular one, its nisab will be, I'll count its year from the 10th of Ramadan. No. You look at the year as a whole, your zakatable year, and you look at what may have increased, decreased, etc., and you take it from there. Okay, let me ask you guys. Umar from India. let's say a person is farming. Okay. Okay, no, leave farming for now. Let's say you have $1 million. You started a business. You asked Naeem for money and he gave you 1 million. Okay. You with me?
Yeah.
He gave you $1 million. And mashallah, you start as a big businessman. Your business is doing well. And at the end of the year, you calculate from your business specifically, and you find that you have $1.1 million.
So I'll pay zakah on the $0.1 million, not the whole.
100,000, because 1.1 million, but your debt is $1 million you have to pay to him, so you pay zakah on 100,000. Naeem.
Yes, Sheikh.
Let's say you own a dairy farm. Okay.
Okay.
And you start off with 3 cows.
Okay.
Just to make it easier for you, even though zakah you pay according to the lunar year, just to make it easy for you, I'm going to use the solar months.
Okay.
You started off with 3 cows in January. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then in March, you had these cows gave birth and you got to 6 cows in March.
Sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had these 6 cows for the whole year. They got to 9, for example.
Okay.
When does your zakatable year start?
In January.
Where's a different answer? Omar Al-Madani. When does your year to count zakah start? He started at the dairy farm. He started off, mashallah, somebody gave him 3 cows. I said, start off. He started, he wants milk and he wants them to reproduce. By March, he's got 6.
Be March.
And, huh?
Sorry, Sheikh. I didn't realize that was on speaker.
Yeah. Do you want to change your answer?
I said, could it be March? I'm just thinking different.
We want this or we want this? Okay. Omar, do you have an answer? Al-Madani? No answer.
For me, I said we need to have like 13 cow, like minimum. Then if you have 30 cow, we can do zakah.
Okay, stop.
I'm kind of confused here.
Omar from India, do you have an answer?
Yes, Sheikh. It will count from January because his intention was to for the reproduction, meaning to start a dairy farm. So we'll count it from January itself.
طيب حسبك. عالم غير.
Sheikh, I don't think so that he has to pay the car because the cow, the number has increased, but the nisab will not apply because.
Okay, let me change my question. Omar Al-Madani, he mentioned it correctly. Let me change my question. Let's say he's living in Zimbabwe, there's no camels. Okay, and now there's a big hype for camel milk. They say how healthy it is. So he's starting a camel farm. Omar, mashallah, you've read in Fiqh, so you answered. Well done. As you take, when we're speaking about cows, the nisab for cows is higher. The nisab for cows is higher, not 30. So let me change my question to camels. Naeem starts to farm. He wants dairy. He wants milk from his camels. He starts off with 3. By March, he has 6. And by the end of the year, he has 9. When does his zakatable year start? And how much zakah will he pay? When does he start calculating his zakah? Naeem.
Sheikh, I think it's March, because you don't pay zakat on less than 5 camels.
On less than nisab. So, exactly. So
Okay.
there's a few things you've got to look here. If a person is lower than nisab, and this is to do with your paper money, and it's to do with your gold and silver, and it's to do with your bank balance. If you lower than nisab, zakah is not yet compulsory upon you. You only start counting the minute you've reached nisab or you've gone over. So you started your camel milk project in January, for example. You started off with 3, and you don't pay zakah, you don't pay zakah, you don't pay zakah. The minute you reach March now, and you've got 6 camels, you say, okay, in March I've got 6 camels. This is where I've reached nisab. Why the nisab for camels, as you can see here, is 5, right? After that, you got another 3 during the year. You're still in this threshold. So next year, March, you would pay 1 sheep. Okay, right. Let's carry on the same question. Let's say his nisab started on the 3rd of Ramadan. Okay, mashallah, he starts farming, and he gets milk, and he's got a big business, and eventually he gets to 1,000 camels. Whether he buys from somebody and they reproduce and he gets to 1,000 camels. Then next year, just before he has to pay zakah. So we said he must pay zakah on the 3rd of Ramadan. On the 1st of Ramadan, la qaddar Allah, you find that, meaning may Allah protect, you find that there's a natural disaster and all his camels die. Just 2 days before zakah is due. How much zakah does he pay? Anyone?
He pays no zakah.
Pays no zakah. Why?
Because he's not his sahib nisab now.
Yes, so the year hasn't passed. And this, you find it happens a lot. I'm not talking about in farming, but somebody's got goods, they've got a warehouse. And may Allah protect all of us. Natural disaster, there's a fire, and everything burns down. And his zakatable year hasn't yet elapsed. So he pays on the 3rd of Ramadan, 1st of Ramadan, everything burnt. Here on those goods, he won't pay. If he's got any other wealth, he will pay. But what happens if zakah was compulsory upon him on the 3rd of Ramadan? He didn't pay. Either he was lazy or he forgot. He'll say, I'll do it. And then all of a sudden, on the 10th of Ramadan, natural disaster strikes and all his camels are gone. Let's say the 9 camels that he had, they all die. How much zakah does he pay?
Sheikh, I think still he will not pay.
I think he will pay, Sheikh, because his zakat year was up.
So this is it's a mas'ala. I didn't take it on purpose, but you guys must know it. And inshallah, hopefully, after you get a good understanding, we'll take it. There's a question, or the fuqaha differ when it comes to this ruling. Is your zakah compulsory upon the ayn, upon the actual wealth you have, or is it in your dhimma? Is it something that you owe? So whether, let's say this, that's a book, okay. Let's say this is a camel. Or these are 9 camels altogether, okay? Some of those who say that your zakah is compulsory on these 9 camels, if they had to die or they had to perish or something had to happen to them without you being clumsy, without tafriq from your side, they call tafriq, then according to the Hanafi madhab, they say that he won't pay zakah. And amongst themselves, they debate. Some of them amongst them, they say he'll pay, and some of them, they say he won't pay. But this is on condition it's a natural disaster. So let's say he's supposed to pay on the 3rd of Ramadan, and that person who collects the zakah, he doesn't come. Then all of a sudden on the 10th of Ramadan, there's a flood and they all die. Here they'll say he doesn't have to pay. Whereas the other madhahib, they'll say, no, the minute your zakah became compulsory upon you, it remains in your dhimma. So what happened after that to your wealth, it will still remain as a debt that you'll have to pay. And there's a lot of tafsil and a lot of explanation and nuances when it comes to this mas'ala. I just wanted to mention it so you guys are familiar with such a mas'ala. Any questions with regards to what we took? Can we move on?
Sheikh, I have a question here. When the camels grew from 3 to 6, the newborns were still newborns. Do we also consider the baby camels in the stock?
It will come. It will come. This mas'ala will come. And in short, basically, Umar radiallahu anhu told the people who are going to collect zakah, he said that count it from their nisab. So let's say they've got four big camels and one baby. He said, count it from there, but don't take it. So as you'll take right now, whatever zakah and nisab you've taken, the person is paying in sheep. The minute they have to pay in camels, he says that if they've got, let's say, 25, or they've got, 25, and they have to give one camel. He says, 24 big ones, one small one. He says, count it as 25, but don't take that small one. You understand? And this will also comes when it comes to your sheep and your cows. So you count it, but the person collecting the zakah on behalf of the Islamic government shouldn't take that small one. And then you'll also learn later on what happens if a person has to give a camel at a certain threshold, which is supposed to be a 2-year-old camel, but he's only got one that's 3 years old, which is better. What does he do here? Or let's say he has to give one which is 3 years old and he's only got one which is less in value, 2 years old. What does he do here? Inshallah, he will take that. So, no more questions? Okay. This, you've got to learn these ansibah because as you'll see tomorrow and the next day, they carry on going. So from 25 to 35, 25 to 35 is different, and then 36 to 46 is different, or 45, and then 46 to 61 is different, and then and you're carrying on. So inshallah, you learn those. So for now, you just make your notes and write them. Let me share this. Okay. We carry on with Masail in Aqidah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We had started by speaking about the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What you've got to realize is how we learning the actual name with the meaning. And this is obviously from Allah's order to us. Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. And for Allah, the best of names. So call out to Him by these great names, the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If anything, that's an encouragement for every single one of us to go out, obviously to find these names of Allah in the Quran, to understand them, to ponder over them, to use them when calling out to Him in your dua. And that's why when you look at certain ayat in the Quran, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about justice, example, and how justice should be carried out, this is not a position or a place where a person should be shown, I won't say should be shown, but this is a place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing His authority. Hence you find that He will use one of His names that imply might and authority to end of the ayah. When He's speaking about calling the sinners, for example, towards tawbah, you find He ends off with some of His names or His attributes that speak about rahmah, forgiveness, and mercy. When He's speaking about how He's the one who sustains, He's the one who grants, He's the one who accepts the dua of the people who call out to Him, and He accepted the dua of the Anbiya alayhim salatu wassalam. You find a lot of the times those duas, they have the name of Allah, Ar-Rabb, ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وقال ربكم your Lord ادعوني أستجب لكم. Call out to me, I will respond to you. So when you learn this, inshallah, you become better when it comes to making your dua. You'll be able to make dua with more concentration, and inshallah, your dua would be closer to being accepted. That's why if you look at the dua of Zakaria alayhi salam, for example, he knows that he's reached old age. He knows that his wife has reached old age. He knows that she's barren. So he calls out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, وَهَبْ لِي مِن لَدُنْكَ وَلِيًّا. From hiba. Hiba is literally to gift or to give. And from the names of Allah is Al-Wahhab. Al-Wahhab is the one who gives, the one who gifts. And you'll find the more you dive deep into this, inshallah, you become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You get to learn who your creator is, how your creator is, and what he expects from you. Second point I want to touch on, inshallah, today, and then next week we will start off with the names. Inshallah, we'll start off with Allah and Al-Ilah. But the second point today I want to touch on is when it comes to the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah himself, he informs us that he has certain names. So it's not for anybody to say, you know what, this name, it doesn't make sense to me, so it can't be a name. Or if we give Allah this name, then we would be comparing him to the creation, hence we can't give him. And this comes this comes under when the scholars speak about ta'til and tahrif and takyif and tamthil. What's ta'til? Ta'til is, there's a group who came before, they said, if you have to say that from the names of Allah is Ar-Rahman, okay, the most merciful, then they said, you know what, mercy shows weakness. How can Allah have mercy? And they then went further to say this mercy shows weakness, because if you look at a human being, you find they're weak. So they said, in order for us to glorify and exalt Allah, it's better for us not to take by this meaning and completely negate this name and whatever it implies. So that's one group of people. Another group of people, they likened Allah to the creation. So some of the sifat of Allah, some of his attributes, some of his names, in order to understand them, they said that they compared it to some of the attributes that a human being may have, and this is also wrong. Others, in order to give example, they liken Allah to the creation, and this you find especially when it comes to other faiths, etc. And Islam is not like that. So people who try to depict Allah, they try to draw who is Allah. Well, at the end of the day, what are you doing? You're likening him to a creation, to one of his creation, and Allah says, "Laysa kamithlihi shay." There's nothing that is comparable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing like him. He himself, he is one unique, the one and only, the one who deserves to be worshipped. Laysa kamithlihi shay. So that's an important point I want you guys to remember, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his names, whatever he informed us, we believe in those names. We don't ask about the kayf. We don't ask about the how. We believe that he informed us that he is the one who is most merciful. He is the one who is able to do everything. He is the one who gifts without any means, any physical or apparent means that we can see. We believe all that. How does he do it? There's so many things we don't know how they work, but we believe. So that's extremely important, that when it comes to the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe in them as they are. And the minute a person tries to now understand, no, but how does Allah do this? How did Allah do this? They fall into a rabbit hole, which eventually leads them to say, but if I say that, the example I gave you, if I say now Allah is merciful, it will mean that I'm actually disrespecting him, because the mercy comes with weakness, etc., etc. So we believe, no, Allah informed us that, example, he is the most merciful, or he informed us that he is able to do all things. He informed us that how and all the detail, he didn't inform us. Our job is to believe, and that was the message of the Anbiya alayhim salatu wassalam, as well as the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. They believed in the names of Allah as they were. And inshallah, next week we'll take these names bi'idhnillah. Any questions with regards to what we've taken in this? This is just two small introductions. So we spoke about how many names does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have. And I think you guys now understand how many names he has. Umar al-Madani, how many names does Allah have?
Infinite.
Yeah, many. Allah has many, many, many names. From amongst them, there are 99. Man ahsaha dakhal al-jannah. The meaning of ihsa, a difference amongst the scholars, but we said the most encompassing meaning. Whoever reads them, memorizes them, understands them, practices upon them, inshallah they'll enter into Jannah. And what's interesting is the person who loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who loves his names and his attributes, bi'idhnillah, he enters into Jannah. And that's why at the time of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, there was one man who would always recite Qul huwallahu ahad. He would always recite. It's mentioned in some riwayat, even when he would leave the salah, then he would end off with this. So they went to ask him, why do you do this? Why do you recite this surah so much? It was one of us, what would we say? To save time. He said, because I love the attributes of Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. I love these attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hence I love this surah. So the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam told those who were around him to inform him that your love for this, your love for these names of Allah, these attributes of Allah, the surah that contains all these names and attributes has entered you into Jannah. That's an authentic hadith.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Yeah.
Sheikh, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about himself in the Quran, do we take the meaning of the verse of the ayah literally, or we take the metaphorical meaning?
Look, when you look at the first generation, those who were closest to Nubuwah, Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, first three generations, you find that they took the meaning literally without kayf. And as I told you, and you'll slowly get into detail with this. I don't want you to jump ahead, but Allah informed you that these are one of his names, these are one of his attributes. Who are we to now say that, okay, no, but this doesn't mean this? And it then goes on into a long topic of majaz in the Quran. Is there majaz in names of Allah, majaz in fiqh, majaz in the Quran as a whole? And you go into very long masail. But I would still say, and I personally believe, the safest option, Allah informed you that, you know what, these are my names, these are my attributes. What's the safest option? Say, I believe, Ya Allah, you told me that these are your names, these are your attributes. I've believed in them. And how all that happens, I don't know. And that's where you find most of the scholars, they didn't allow people to ask questions further than that, because you carry on going down a rabbit hole. And that's why, similar to the hadith where the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, Shaitan comes to a person and he says, who created this? And the person says, Allah. And who created this? Allah. Who created this? Allah. Who created this? Allah. And he eventually gets to the point where he says, okay, so who created Allah? So it's all you end up going down a rabbit hole where you then try to look for answers which don't really make sense for a lot of things. And part of belief is al-imanu bil-ghayb, to believe in the unseen, and from the unseen is some of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us. طيب Umar.
I heard about the story. We should say, Amantu billah, I believe in Allah. When you say,
I believe in Allah, yes. Speaking about that story is to end off is the minute Shaitan gets a person to that, then he must say Amantu billah, meaning I believed in Allah. More than that, you don't know. Yesterday we were talking about death, and Where were you before you came into this world? Where will you go after you depart this world? What happens to the people? Okay, what other creatures does Allah have that we don't know about, etc. And the path you going on is more the second type of, the second group of writings, or the second way of approaching this topic, and we're not going through it as of yet. I've given you a small summary of it. Believe in what Allah has told you. As for Kayf, don't ask about Kayf. Inshallah, if you guys stop here, I want to finish Nahu, and then we'll take your questions after that. So carry on. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So far, with the students on level 3, we've reached Al-Arabiyyatu Bayna Yadik, book 1b. And what I did notice is when it comes to Sarf, because the book doesn't teach you Sarf in detail, you find that a lot of you are lost. So I want to give you guys a small introduction, and then inshallah, from there, we'll go into detail. So once you're able to, you've got vocabulary, you've got sentence structure, you're able to speak and understand decently, you've got a little bit of Nahu, now you're getting a little bit of Sarf, and inshallah all that will come together, and you'll find yourself progressing. So what's Sarf? What are we talking about when it comes to Sarf? We spoke about your Nahu first, and we said Nahu is to do with the harakah on the last letter. So if you've got Zaid, for example, is it Zaydun or Zaydan or Zaydin? Right? Nahu is speaking about this. Sarf, on the other hand, is speaking about, they call it the wazn of the word. Wazn literally means a weight, or you could call it, for understanding purposes, you could call it the rhythm of the word. It's a certain weight. So there's, for example, the word daraba. Okay, and you've already learned about past tense, present tense, future tense, etc. So when it comes to this daraba, you find that it's made up of how many letters? It's made up of 3. You got 1, 2, and 3. Daraba. You understood? Now, there's some words which are made up of more than 3. So you got 4, and then you got 5, and then you got 6, you got 7, etc. So what the scholars did in order, obviously, to preserve the language in Arabic. Sorry, 1 second. What you've got here is this daraba. Okay, it's come on as a weight of a certain word. What's equivalent to this is fa'ala. So in order to unify everything, they gave you fa'ala. So fa'ala is like a scale. Okay, fa, ain, and lam. This is like your scale. Any word you get this 3 letters, and they generally go to fi'l madi, mudhakkar. So you look, this is in the past tense, masculine, and they only speak about singular, 1, mufrad. So how do you get the weight of a word? You weight according to this and according to its harakat. So this one here is daraba. Okay, what's it equivalent to? Fa'ala. Fa'ala. And if you've got sami'a, for example, to hear, you've got sin with a fatha, then you've got a mim with a kasra, and you've got that. What's it equivalent to? You also use, so this is your scale. Everything you put it and you compare against here. So sami'a is equivalent to fa'ila. Okay. If you've got karuma, is equivalent to fa'ula. So you got fa, ain, and lam. And notice how here we're speaking about, sorry, 1 second, I just want to close my door, it's raining. sorry. Here you've got fa'ula, because here is karuma. And notice how it's made up of 3 letters. What happens if you've got one made up of 4 letters? Inshallah, we'll get to that. 5, we'll get to that. 6, we'll get to that. So what they're teaching you here is, if you learn this weight here, so for example, you know that this comes on fa'ala, and you know this comes on fa'ila, and this we're speaking about madi. Mudari', fi'l mudari' also has its own weight. So for example, daraba, you'll get to yadribu. Let's go down here. Daraba, fi'l mudari' is yadribu. It's masculine. Mudari' and it's singular. Yadribu is equivalent to what? Let's look at this word here, daraba. And we used our scale. We said our scale is fa, ain, and lam. And then we take the harakat. So dad is sitting on the space of fa, equivalent. Let me get another color here. This is the beginning of your word, so they all start with a fa, okay? And then you've got an ain, and then you've got a lam, okay? Now, when you got yadribu, so we're saying that this dad, when you wait, it coincides with the fa, and this ra coincides with the ain. This ba coincides with the lam. Go to fi'l mudari'. Where's your dad? Your dad is here, so we're going to put a fa here. Where's your ain? Your ain is equivalent to your lam, so you put an ain there. And where's your lam? And ba, here's your ba, so it comes, you get a lam here. And what have you got extra in the front? You've got a ya, so yaf'alu. You've got the yaf'alu. So what's the weight? What's the wazn of this? And I'm going to use the word wazn from now. It's fa'ala. And yadribu, yaf'ilu. Daraba, yadribu. And once you learn these weights, then you'll be able to come to the correct harakah when it comes to your fi'l madi and mudari'. You'll be able to learn how to make fi'l amr when you want to order somebody. You'll also be able to learn that, or you'll be able to understand that when you've got a sick letter, so there's we mentioned that the sick letters are 3, waw, alif, and ya. How do you take it to its original form? And then from there, how do you get it to fi'l mudari', etc.? What I want you guys to understand for today, because you haven't taken it before, is in Sarf, you're speaking about this. You're speaking about if the word has 3 letters, it's coming to one of these, and there's 6 of them, so we'll take. And after you're able to get there, you're able to derive the different weights. For now we took 3, and inshallah tomorrow we'll take all 6. That's what we're speaking about. We're speaking about the word as a whole, and after that you're then able to derive what's called ism fa'il and ism maf'ul. So daraba yadribu darban, and the person hitting called ism fa'il, fahuwa daribun, and the person who's being hit, madrubun. But all that you're able to derive all these words the minute you learn that wasn't. And inshallah it will come with practice. So for now, I just want you to understand that much. Any questions when it comes to the Arabic we've taken so far? And something important to mention. After that, after you've understood this, then you've got your dama'ir. So your damir is he, him, her, you, etc. There's some which are not joined to the word. They'll come at the beginning. Some which are joined to the word to show the actual fa'il, the doer of the action. Some which are joined to the word to show the maf'ul bih, the object, the person who that action fell on. So all that. So for example, let's say daraba, and a person wants to say I hit, so you say darabtu. Okay, you add a ta there, it's a damir. And then you want to say I hit him, then you're going to add another ha there, the dhamma, ضربته, and this one will become sukun. So once you're able to learn this, inshallah, you won't make any mistakes when it comes to this, and you'll be able to understand. The minute you get a new word, you'll say, okay, let me trace it back to its root word. Okay, I need it to be fi'l mudari. How do I make it, etc. And inshallah, we'll take it from there. Any questions with regards to this brief introduction as to what we're about to take? Nothing? No question? You didn't understand? Omar?
So in the Arabic, we have the past, the present, that's it?
The past, the present and present future, as well as fi'l amr. They call it, some people call it imperative tense.
The order.
Pardon?
The order, you have to order someone.
Yeah, where you order
Like,
somebody.
Okay.
And then you've got your asma, your nouns also. Then you've got, and there's some words which have become nouns, but they're actually on the wazn of a fi'l. And also when you learn this, then you learn, for example, that there's some awzan. So there's, for example, masajid, okay? Masajid is mamnu' min as-sarf. And when you read the reason, mamnu' min as-sarf means it doesn't take tanween, nor does it take kasra. And when you read the reason, they'll tell you because ala wazni mafa'il. It's on the wazn of mafa'il. Okay, so notice how you've still got that fa'ain and lam, and they've just put it here. So where does this come from? Masajid comes from what? It comes, if you look at the word itself, it's coming from sajada, where a person prostrates to Allah. And masjid, place of worship, place of prostration, and masajid is plural. So then you're able to go back to that. So if you look at this, it comes from sajada, okay? Sajada, ala wazni fa'ala, okay? And so if somebody asks you, what wazn is this? How do you get the wazn? Come here, your sin is equivalent to fa. So put your fa here. And your jim is equivalent to ain. So put your ain here. Your dal is equivalent to lam. So put your lam here. And whatever extras you've got, add them. So here's your fa. Sorry. So what's your extra? You've got a mim extra and you've got an alif extra. And hence masajid ala wazni mafa'il. You see? So say ala wazni mafa'il mamnu' min as-sarf. Then you learn. Then they'll say this if it comes on this weight, mafa'il also is mamnu' min as-sarf. So for example, masabih. Masabih is the plural of misbah. Inshallah, you'll take. So can you see how important this is? And at the beginning, it will take you a little bit of time to pick it up, but then it's very easy after that. Then just with practice, inshallah, you'll get it. Any questions? No questions? Inshallah, those of you on level 3 will try and take a little bit of sarf so you understand. And then when you go back to the book, you'll be able to differentiate. So for example, daraba, he hit, and darabtu is I hit, and darabat, she hit, sami'at, she heard, sami'tu, I heard, etc. You learn sarf as well as the dama'ir. No questions? طيب, inshallah, we'll stop there. See you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow, we might not have an Arabic lesson, but we'll have